Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How are you? Big mahalo. Today, we have another member of Yes to speak with. We're getting excited for 2 area dates, speaking with 3 of the gentlemen from the band. April 27th, Blaisdell Concert Hall. April 29th, the Mac in Kahului, Maui. My next guest, a distinctive, classy guitarist. His style is significant, his resume considerable. His life work way too prolific to fully cover today. I will humbly attempt to navigate a chat through some highlights. He's been, in addition to Yes, part of Asia, GTR, of course, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe, and it's a treat to welcome one of music's great treasures, songwriter, guitarist, Steve Howe from Yes. Aloha and mahalo, my brother. I appreciate you taking some time for me, Steve.
All right. How you doing?
I'm very good, man. And yourself, you excited to be coming out here or what?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we've always been a touring band. It's not like we're one of those bands that stay home all the time and make records. We've always been out with the people, and that's what we seem to be doing still.
No, and I like that about you, and you're just not afraid to go forward. And if I was as ferociously talented on the guitar as you, I wouldn't be fearful of anything either. What's the first trip to Hawaii that you can remember?
I think we've only been once before, as far as I recall. At least I have. Whether, yes, in the 80s when I was with Asia, came across, I'm not sure. But I think sometime around the 2001, we did our trip there. It was very memorable, very beautiful. We just did Honolulu, but this time we're doing Maui. So
yeah, you're talking about 2003 with the orchestra, I presume.
Yeah, that's right, 2003 with the orchestra.
Yeah, that was and a lot of orchestras you guys played with. Is that a difficult thing when you have to team up with folks like that? I mean, or sometimes you look at each other and say, man, this orchestra's just not up to snuff.
Well, that's honest. We did it 2 ways. The first way we did it was in America, was with almost a different orchestra every night. Maybe we had an orchestra for 2 nights if they were in the same area, but usually it was a different orchestra every night. That was pretty difficult because although most of it rests on the ability of the conductor and the rehearsal to transform that, what we did in Europe was totally different. We had 2 orchestras. We toured with one for about 3 weeks, and then we toured with another for about 3 weeks. So they had a chance to play it night after night, which did make things better. But it's a big communication job trying to work with, the band on stage with I can't remember how many people, 30 people behind us.
So it does add that sort of different element. Are the songs, how much sound checking and work? If you're doing, let's just say, not the Europe gig where you have one band that's doing all the gigs, but if you're doing a different orchestra each night, how much practice time and prep is there before a gig like that?
Well, it was some years back, as we pointed out, almost 9 years. So as far as I remember, when we did the different shows, mainly the orchestra just had to rehearse without us. And then, if they were lucky, we popped in and did one song with them, or part of a song, or the introduction, minimizing it as much as we could for our duties there. But I think that was the kind of way it was. I remember rehearsing with them in Hollywood, when we did the Hollywood Bowl. And we all thought it was going to be great. It sounded really good at rehearsal, but then it didn't sound very good at the show. So there you are. You pays your money, you takes your chance, really.
That's why I love the way you think, dude. You do the best interviews. I know that there's something I'm fascinated on the personal level with you as a player. I know that your folks, when you were a little boy, they played a lot of brass band as you grew up. They also had some guitar in the mix. What prompted your first guitar to be a gift when you were 12?
Well, from the age of 10, I was going on at my parents about getting a guitar, and there was the brass band thing was really just a sideline before I realized they had Les Paul and Mary Ford records, and also Tennessee Ernie Ford, 2 Fords, oddly enough. Tennessee Ernie Ford had a great guitarist with him called Jimmy Bryant and Speedy West. And of course, Les Paul's, it speaks for itself. So hearing 78s with those guitarists playing on them really inspired me, as much as equal to the movement of rock and roll and the presence of the guitar in rock and roll. So, after a couple of years of me going, get a guitar, they got me a guitar. So that was the best thing that happened.
They listened. They
did.
Yeah, and thankfully they did too. Your first cover, funny because you said, it was the rock and roll that really got you off. And your first recording, I've read at least, and forgive me if I'm wrong, was a cover of Chuck Berry. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Maybelline.
Right. And and I talked to Chris about a similar sort of thing, and he ended up having some really good stories. When you think about the rest of your life since then, did you get to run into Chuck ever and kind of talk with him, ever acknowledge anything with him?
Yes, I did. Yeah. In about 1969, just before I joined Yes, I was in a band and we were playing at the Albert Hall. In fact, the band was opening for Chuck Berry. He walked on stage and looked at me and said, "I don't need you." But that didn't discourage me. I went to him in the dressing room and I showed him my guitar, my infamous 175. He played it for just a couple of minutes and he said it was amazing. So this guitar's amazingly easy to play. So that's the way I had it set up. Yeah, so I met Chuck then. I told him, I loved his work and everything, and we had a quick chat. But that was about it. It was a very fortunate time to meet somebody that had been a major influence, because Chuck had been, I mean, he had a style. Well, a lot of his songs were the same, virtually. But there was a style there, and it grabbed me, and it was fantastic, fantastic to play.
And he is legendary for that whole... I watched him one time here in Honolulu, and he was just berating the band. I mean, I felt so bad for the band. By the end of the show, I would cringe as he would turn around.
Yeah, he wasn't always that nice to people, but I'll tell you one of the best intros, because he was famous for his intros, but the one that was different from all the others, because there were a lot that were almost the same, Johnny Be Good and all of them. They were almost identical. But Down the Road a Piece, which, of course, is a song he actually didn't write, that was a jazz song, really, down the road, down the road, down the road a piece. Believe it, Chuck didn't write that. And also he did a brilliant guitar opening to that. And I learned that when I was a kid, thinking, this is the best intro he ever wrote. Great piece of jazzy style.
Dude, that's hot. So he basically, you were up for being one of the musicians that night, and he was like, "I don't want you in the gig." Is that what he basically...
Yeah. I thought he usually had a rhythm guitarist, but for some reason he saw me, and I was standing there with the 175, and he just said straight away, he said, I don't need you. And I don't know why that was, that part. I don't know that he may have heard us sound checking. That's all I know.
Well, his loss, Steve. That's what I got to say about that. Say again? I said his loss.
His loss.
Les Paul, another cat. You mentioned him. I know how, and you can hear that one too. By the way, when I hear you, at least now that I'm all grown up listening to you, I think differently about it. Did you meet him and hang with him at all before?
Yeah, I did 2 or 3 times. He was really amazing character. He was dangerous in a nice way. What was great about Les was that he would set you up for a fall, and he did that the first time I ever played with him. On stage, we played a couple of tunes. I said, "Look, just keep it 12 bars." He said, "Sure." And then he suddenly turned around to me and he said to me, "Do you know this song?" I said, "No, I don't know it from Adam." And he started playing it. So I was locked in. But then later on, down at the club he used to play at on a Monday, I was there and I met him before the show, very briefly, and I said to him, look, Les, this is a night off. I'm touring. This is a night off. I'm really not going to get up. He said, "Oh, okay, if you don't want to get up, that's fine." So, of course, halfway through his show, he said, "Hey, you guys won't believe who's here." And he said, Steve's here. So the crowd went crazy. And then he said, "Get up then." And I said, "I told you, Les, I'm not." He said, No, they want you up. So I get up, and then I choose a guitar. It takes about 5 minutes. He's got 3 Les Pauls in the corner. And then, lo and behold, when I get on stage and plug in the guitar, he walks off and says, "Okay, well, look, I'll have a drink. You play something." So you know what I mean? I mean, he was a comedian. He said the last comment I've got is that he said to me, "The kind of guys I get on with are the kind of guitarists who come to the bar with me." So I don't drink, so we didn't exactly hit it off on that level, but other levels we did, and I really loved his playing.
Precious stories, bro. What can you do about that? Acoustics, Brother Steve. When you think about these different places that you played, you got an ear like no other, and you're very critical, which is something I like about you. I've heard you before. You don't hold back, and that's why I like talking with you. There's a couple of different places. You've been in some extremes. I'm just curious if it registers. Maybe it doesn't. In the long history, you've got June 76. You did a lot of stadiums in the 70s, but you did a real big one. That highlight gig that year, JFK Stadium, Philadelphia, big show, 100,000 people. Do you even remember it?
Yeah, I kind of remember it. Yeah, I mean, I remember some things about it. It took your breath away getting up on that stage and And then by the end of the evening, of course, they were burning bits of the stadium to keep warm, which was a bit scary. The question of how many people were there was never really answered, and you can round it up at 100,000 maybe if you like. Of course, we were touring at that time with Peter Frampton, and I think he was pretty overwhelmed as well. So a big show like that was kind of scary. You were kind of thinking, is this Woodstock too, or what? It put the kind of fear of God into you a little bit, that you kind of didn't really know whether this was going to keep under control or, it was all going to go. But it did. The show went through really well, and we had a great time.
When that happens at a concert, when it gets, and I'm sure it doesn't happen that much anymore because the audience is older, and thankfully, nothing, scary happens to you when you play live, or I hope it doesn't. But when it did happen, did that kind of juice your playing? Or did it screw up your playing? Is that fun when that would happen?
In those days when people used to run on stage, that was a little bit scary. When somebody would clamber up on stage and come charging at you, it was reasonably scary. But I was well warmed up to that, because back in the 60s when, I did start playing, back in about 66, 67, there were some dangerous places to play in England, and you'd get there and they'd be like the Hells Angels of England, you know what I mean? And they'd look at you all night long, and they'd have these black gloves on, they'd point at you and say, they'd say, afterwards, I'm going to have you. And it's I think I better get out of here. So a few times, we once got things beaten up. So I went through a few rough times when I was much younger, and that made some of the later things not so scary, because I knew it could actually get worse than it did.
Is there a lot of people tell me that some people, I wouldn't say a lot, some people say they zone out and the size of the venue means nothing, and it's really about the jam with their other artists. And other people tell me when they look around, the size does matter, and an intimate venue really brings out something different. Would any of that apply to your playing?
Well, you're talking about intimate shows and huge shows.
Yeah, I'm saying, exactly.
Well, look, I tell you what, there is no guideline there, because I reckon it's got more to do with the phases of the moon, actually, than where you are. But you can have a really intimate show in a very big place, and you can have a, all-out show in a small place. But predictably, of course, the small place can generally gives you the intimate vibe. But the good thing about a show is it's not a controlled event. The music is not a controlled performance. It's in the lap of other things, and those things are the coming together of the audience and the performer, the venue, and also esoteric things that you just can't define. So as much as you want the show in London or in LA or this particular show to be good, there's no telling. You can get on and it's real nonsense. You might think this is really not going well, and it's the most important show on the tour. Another time you'll be in, Toledo, Ohio, and go on, and for no reason, it's just the most amazing show you've ever done. So that's what I'm telling you. It's unpredictable how good something is. Of course, people want it to be good, so they go with the same spirit, come to our shows and want to have a great time. But for some reason, the chemistry and the moon and the atmosphere and all those things, they're not predictable.
Yeah, that's a cool answer, and it makes a lot of sense. I got a lot out of that. I mean, anything can make. I know what you mean. You're saying you could be in Toledo, and the catering could be awesome, and the vibe is great, and you guys are connecting, and the next thing you know, it's the greatest show on the tour. It's not the venue at all. It's just like the vibe comes together.
Yeah, and even sometimes if everybody makes everything good for you, that doesn't even make a good show.
Right.
I mean, because everything's great doesn't make it. The show is just a coming together of other ingredients that we don't control. We're not fully in control of what makes a great. I mean, we always play good, but when it's that good, I mean, we played in, what's that place in Canada called? Quebec City one time, and I mean, they wouldn't go away. It was just a done deal. This show was so good, they did not want us to go away. And do you remember those moments? Some of them anyway.
And I can imagine there have been a lot. And as a final note to venues, is there a place or a time in your life, and it can be something more recent, though, a building that the prestige of it has mattered to you that you got to do it?
Well, obviously, the first time you do Madison Square Garden, you think, hang on, this is important. The first time you do, Wembley Arena or something, I mean, there's always those firsts, and then you go back loads of times. So And as far as favourites, that's almost the same danger line, is that you may have had a great time at San Diego Convention Hall last time you were there. You had an amazing night, right, in that gig, and then you go back there a year later and you don't have such a good time.
Right, you're like, what's going wrong?
yeah. Well, this should have been good. So that's it. I think it's like everything. It's like love. It's like food. You know, you can have the same ingredients and cook it not quite so well, and it's not as good. So it's a real unknown territory. And a lot of people, as they get older, say, I don't even know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm just here doing this. You know, this comes through me. This music kind of comes through me more than, hey, I'm the smart ass who's so good at this that you think I'm great. You know, what some musicians like to say is, hang on, it's not only about me. I'm the translator for this idea, you know, and I think that's a really good thing to hear musicians say, because ego sucks. You know, when people think they're the best thing since baked beans, basically, that doesn't wash with me. I think we're very much we're all human, and we've all got to do our work.
Yeah, you're channeling it in so many ways.
Yeah.
No, and you are. That's a great description. A final note before I let you go. Your son Dylan and Virgil, they're musicians, your two sons. Are they coming out on the trip with you, and do you still, gig around a little bit with those cats? I think that's really special that you have passed on that. Well,
yeah, there's times when we can. Dylan plays with me in the Steve Howe trio, and then he works on my solo albums for me as well. And we do plan to reinvent this trio idea. We've done a couple of albums, Traveling and The Haunted Melody, and we're going to reinvent ourselves a little bit more. And Virgil, he's a great drummer too. He's on a project I've got in the can. He's got his own band. I mean, they both basically wanted their own careers, and they like to dabble with Dad. You know what I mean? It's not like they're waiting for me to call them. They've got their own music, their own projects, their own bands. And, we've helped them a little along the way, given them advice and assistance. But mostly they've got to get their own thing going, and they both have done that. So Dylan's out touring right now with Wilco Johnson, who was a guitarist with Thoroughgoods, and then Virgil's out with a couple of bands as well. Little Barry, in fact, they were playing on the East Coast of America just recently. And, they're both very exciting musicians, so I'd love to play with them.
I think it's awesome. I think it's a fantastic gift, one of the many that you've given us. I appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
All right, cheers. Nice one.
Thank you.
Bye.